Welcome to the NCDWI Guy podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI Guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 122 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, we are talking about feeling your client's feelings, the importance of empathy in representation, focusing on DWI cases, but it applies to all types of representation. Why it's important to understand the mindset that your client is facing when they are charged with a crime, when they are arrested, when they are taken to jail, when they end up months later in a courtroom standing in front of a judge. It's so important for us to really step into the shoes of our clients. This is something that is, I think, critical to delivering top-level service, top-level representation. At our office this quarter, we are focusing, our core value focus is on our mission. And our mission is helping good people in their darkest hour. Helping good people in their darkest hour. And in order to help our clients, in order to help good people in their darkest hour, the only way to really be able to do that well is to know what it feels like to be in your darkest hour. To know that anxiety, that dread, that stress, that fear, that frustration. The only way to represent a client well is to really take on those feelings. And so when somebody calls after being arrested with a DWI, you get the call the next morning at 9 o'clock, and the client a lot of times just feels like they have had the wind knocked out of their sails, right? Everybody experiences a DWI arrest in a different way. So sometimes maybe it's not even unexpected for certain people. It's almost a cry for help. But many clients, I think it is a total punch in the mouth, total punch in the face, totally unexpected. And life around them has just shattered. What they knew, the vision of themselves as a person, the vision of their life, what their family is thinking about them, how they are going to provide for their family, how they're going to get back to and forth to work, how coworkers are going to react, how people in their friendship community is going to react, or church community is going to react. All of these things are going through their head. Who is going to find out about this? Is this going to be in the papers? Is this going to be online? What's going to happen in the courtroom? Am I going to go to jail? Will I be able to drive soon? All of these questions are flooding through their head, and their life has changed in a split second, right? In a split second, their life has changed. And when your life has been upended in that way, when there is just this flood of anxiety, fear, embarrassment, feeling like you've acted like a fool, which in many cases that is true, right? Like in many cases there have been foolish decisions made, but now that is public, to whatever limited extent, police officer has witnessed that, they've been in front of a magistrate judge, other people at the jail have maybe seen them in the state or know that they've been arrested. It just is kind of mind breaking. So I think it's important to spend a little bit of time really thinking through the places in your life where things have come unhinged, when things have just gone totally off the rails. There's several moments that really stand out to me. I can think of many bad decisions that I've made and things that I've been embarrassed about in front of other people, words that other people have spoken that have been, shattering, situations that I've got myself into where it's just like, gosh, I really put myself into a bad spot. We've all got situations, but I think in terms of, personally for me, just life shattering moments, all of those have been kind of death or health related. When I was 18 years old, I was studying at college for final exams in May. And I think I had taken 3 or 4 already. I only had 1 or 2 left to go. I was studying for a history exam, and the phone rang in the dormitory. The phone rang, and I never answered the phone. I was very rarely was I even out in the kind of common area where there was like an actual joint telephone. This is how you communicated with people at that time. You were still there was calling cards that were getting used, right? Like this was not the world of everybody owning a cell phone. Like you had to wait for the next guy to get off the telephone so that you could call out to your family or girlfriend or whoever it was that you were trying to talk to. There was a line at the phone. And so, I happened to be sitting out there, and phone to the dorm rings, and I just happened to pick up the phone. Just almost never. I may have answered the phone like one other time that entire year. I mean, I just did not. I just figured it was going to be for somebody else pretty much all the time. So I go pick up the phone, and my dad is on the other line, and he just sounded broken, and he said, Jake, and I don't know exactly, the words that he used to communicate. He just said, Jake, your mom's had a real bad brain injury, and you and Kaylee need to get home now. I tried to reach her, and I can't get through, but you guys need to get home immediately. We talked for a couple of seconds more, hung up the phone, and again, like, my brain just kind of froze in that moment. Like, what do I do? What's the next step? So I, ran over across the campus to my sister's dorm. This is a small school, Christendom College, only about 400 students at the time, still, I think in that same range. So small campus. So I ran across the campus, got one of the girls to go inside to get my sister. And she came downstairs. I immediately tell her what my dad has told me about our mom, and she starts. She calls her then boyfriend, now husband, to come and help us figure out how we're going to get back to North Carolina. So basically, within just a couple of hours, we're on the road. People are praying in the chapel for us at the campus. I'm finding this out later. People are figuring out how to basically kind of excuse us from exams. We're heading down to North Carolina, and I can just remember in the car on the way to the hospital, just this feeling of total, life shatter. Just your world being broken around you, and not knowing what to do, not knowing what to expect from what's ahead. Regret, feeling like I hadn't reached out to my mom enough while I was at college, feeling like what's the situation, how bad are things really, because again, your mind goes to the worst possible spaces. So we got to the hospital, just really, I mean, serious, basically terminal situation that my mom was in. She's on life support. She lived for a couple of days after we got back into into Asheville. I got to spend some time with her, and she was unconscious, so there was only kind of one way conversation going on with her, spending time with family and friends and crying. Just the whole experience of having your life broken around you and feeling all of these very out of the ordinary feelings in terms of anxiety and stress and just total wreckage, disappointment, sadness, brokenness. Again, feelings of kind of failure in terms of being a good son at the time. And so all of those things are just crashing down around. And fortunately for me, I had a beautiful moment with my mom as she passed away. I was in the room when she passed away, and had kind of been praying out loud minutes before, and my now wife was in the room with me. Girlfriend at the time, now wife, was with me, and it just is a moment of again, peace in the midst of total madness and wreckage. But those just kind of like split second moments that just kind of forever change your life. I had another moment with our first son, Blaze. My wife was I think 33 weeks pregnant at the time. She said, something doesn't feel right. We went to the hospital where, I think we're just going in for a checkup. Basically they have an ultrasound technician that, asks some questions and then starts doing an ultrasound. You can tell by the look on her face something is wrong. Things don't seem right. And then basically they get a doctor in there who says, I can't find a heartbeat. And again, it's just one of those moments where you're like, well, you got to just be looking harder, right? Like that something you just don't. I mean, maybe the baby's turned upside down, or there's something wrong with the machine. And my brain literally like could not wrap my head around the fact that our son is dead. It just was like one of those kind of mind-breaking moments where there's just no ability to really appropriately kind of process the earth-shattering feelings of just total devastation, total destruction. Again, I'm kind of most of these like earth-shattering moments have been death and health situations. Same thing when my wife was diagnosed with cancer. We went and met with her regular OBGYN. He was like, I'm seeing some concerning things on the scan. Why don't you go meet with this doctor? And this was kind of a close friend who was her OBGYN at the time. And so, it's kind of like when he says that it's pretty serious deal. So we go and meet with the specialist, and it took this was we had a great doctor to deal with my wife's cancer, but he was talking forever and using medical terminology, and I walked out of there not even realizing that my wife had uterine cancer. Just the words that he was using, I didn't realize what that was. And so we went home, we started researching, and it's kind of like, what's happened? What are we dealing with? What are we facing? Oh, this is cancer. What do we do now? Like, how do we address this? And just all of this anxiety and unknown and stress and trying to figure things out and trying to get a game plan together for moving forward and attacking this disease. All of those things are kind of floating through your mind, in those just kind of earth-shattering moments that come out of left field. And, I think that all of us have had those experiences, and it's impossible to compare any one person's difficulties or struggles or stresses with another's. Everybody has different stresses in their life. Maybe you have gone through a nasty divorce. Maybe you've been, kind of facing an audit, a bar audit or IRS audit. And it just has caused like this incredible stress in your life. Maybe you've had medical procedure. Maybe there's been, some final exam that you still have nightmares about because of the fact that, you felt like you were underprepared, or you ended up making a bad grade, or every question on the test was one you didn't know the answer to. Maybe you had, somebody in your family or a close friend that you had to watch go through a terrible disease. But thinking about those moments where we have been in our darkest hour, right? It doesn't have to be that you were in a situation where you're, charged with anything. It doesn't have to necessarily be interaction with any particular entity or law enforcement or anything like that. When has been your darkest hour? And I think identifying that moment and just thinking, let me try to remember the feelings from that darkest hour moment that I had, the way that my stomach felt, the way that the feelings of disappointment, grief, devastation, embarrassment, frustration. Let me just soak those in and kind of really process what that felt like, both mentally and physically, right? Like that physical stress that comes up, muscles tightening, stomach being, destroyed, whatever it might be. Thinking about the way that your mind and your body was feeling, that creates a different mindset for us answering the phone and getting on the call with that person, because the person that we get on the call with, they are in their darkest hour. They are feeling those feelings. They are feeling the stress, the anxiety, the embarrassment, the disappointment. They are feeling all of those feelings during that initial phone call. And if we just kind of, come in with the mindset and my hand is raised right now. I am guilty of this. I've done, hundreds of DWI consults, represented hundreds of clients charged with DWI. And it's easy to get into the mindset of, well, it's just another day at the office, right? Just another day here at the office. But for the person on the other end of that phone, it's not just another day at the office. It is that moment when life as they knew it became unhinged. And now everything that they knew is completely shattered, completely broken. What they thought their world looked like yesterday is just a broken image of what life looks like currently, and they can't even see what life looks like tomorrow. They can't even forecast the future because there's too many unknown questions, too many unknown pieces of their life that they now have to pick up, trying to kind of mend the relationship with their spouse. Are my parents going to find out about this? Is this going to be, again, in a newspaper? Is my boss going to find out about this? How am I going to get back and forth to get groceries for my kids? All of these things are just complete unknowns. So again, everything's broken, but you also have this additional layer of not knowing how to fix it and having all of these unanswered worries, unanswered questions, no game plan for how to get things right. I think one of the things that was most frustrating to me about when my wife had cancer is that we had several, very, very thorough, long conversations with the doctor about the type of cancer that she was going to be working through, facing, attacking, the kind of different treatment options that were there. And all my brain wanted to do from the first conversation that we had was, well, let's start fixing this. Are we starting chemotherapy tomorrow? Like, let's get something going. And that's just not how it worked, right? They had to do additional tests and identify and make sure where this had spread, and then basically get a regimen in place and scheduling set up and figuring out how this is going to work. And in the meantime, I mean, it felt like years that this went on. I think she didn't start treatment for about 2 or 3 weeks. We found out about this right before Christmas. She started chemotherapy right at Christmas time, and so in my brain, it's just like every day that we are not actually treating this disease, it's getting worse. It's growing inside, like it's festering. Like how are we not doing something about this? So that unknown and that not being able to kind of get on the attack mode and do something about it is really frustrating and scary, terrifying, angering. I mean, there's just so many feelings of helplessness in that moment of not knowing what you're supposed to be doing. So we can't help people. We can't help people on the other end of that phone call if we don't understand what they are going through. If we don't get the fact that this is broken completely, that person's worldview, shattered it to the core. Everything around them that they thought was stable is now hanging by a thread. If we don't understand that, we cannot appropriately respond, right? And again, obviously every client is different. Every person's perception of this is different, but just knowing what the client is feeling, is extremely helpful, because I think from putting yourself in the client's shoes, you also are in a better place to stare them meaningfully in the eyes and say, we are going to get through this. You are going to come out on the other side of this. I've told many clients in the past, this is not going to be the worst thing that you have to face in your life. Unfortunately, it's not going to be the worst thing that you have to face in your life. And it's not to say that for them to take that charge lightly or their arrest lightly or the consequences lightly. It's so that we can put things in proper perspective. But you can't put things in proper perspective if you don't have a really solid perspective of where that client's mental state is at the time that they get on the phone with you. I think it's important to remember this, not only during that initial consult, but also when you go into the courtroom. Because if you've been practicing for, a year, 3 years, 10 years, 15 years, again, this is just another day at the office. This is just another part of the daily grind. What's my schedule look like today? Okay, how many courthouses do I have to be at, or which courtrooms am I in this morning? It's all routine for us. It's all just another day at the office for us. It's habit. It's routine. There's nothing out of the ordinary. We can't forget that that's not the case for our clients, or at least not for all of our clients. Maybe some of our clients are in there more than we are. So for them, they might be okay. We don't have to worry about those clients. But for the ones that have never faced being in a courtroom before, it is terrifying, anxiety provoking, unknown, scary. It is something that we need to put our brain on in terms of what does this feel like. So again, unlike the arrest or the accident that led up to the charge that just kind of comes out of left field, bam, hits you in the face, right? When those blue lights go off behind, all of a sudden the world just comes crashing down, right? That sobering moment when the lights are going off, it's like, okay, 1 second everything was great guns, having a good time. Next moment, big trouble that is now causing like a shattering of everything that I knew. Different situation for the client going into the courtroom, because now they have had days, weeks, months to anticipate this upcoming court date. And it has been on their schedule, and they've been thinking about it regularly. They have been losing sleep over it, right? This has been something that, again, isn't out of left field. It is dreaded and being waited for day after day after day of this is going to be coming up, right? And some people are better at dealing with that anxiety than others. Some people aren't as anxious about going in the courtroom, but those clients that, the ones that are calling every couple of weeks, hey, anything else you need from me? Courts at this time, where do I need to be? The person that needs all those details, that is arising out of anxiety. out of concern that something that they are not going to hear or remember is going to cause a big problem. So different set of circumstances that you can think of that may have been kind of more attuned to this, right? So a law school test, right? You know, this final test is coming up for a few weeks and you're like, I have really struggled in this class. It is going to be tough. And then going into that kind of law exam week, just, kind of dreading these upcoming exams and just kind of, being totally done by the time you've put the final pencil down at the end of your last exam. But there's all of that buildup going into that. Think of your own experience being in the courtroom the first time and standing in front of a judge, standing up there and talking to the judge about a case that you are defending. You haven't even been accused of doing anything wrong, and it's terrifying. Still, getting up in front of a jury, if you don't have some level of anxiety about that, it doesn't mean that it's debilitating anxiety. I mean, it's something that, it's like a big sports game, right? That's on the schedule further out, right? You've got those butterflies going in the stomach of like, okay, I want to get in there and start this thing. Let me get in there and get that first hit. Let me get in there and kind of, start running, moving, getting the body kind of in the game and going into autopilot. Going into every jury trial I've had, there's been that anxiety, and it's not just like right at the beginning. It's almost like before each day or each start of each session. Once I get in and I start questioning or talking to people, the anxiety just goes way down. The autopilot goes on. It's like, okay, we're in this thing. That's fine. But the buildup and prepping the case for trial is just something that there's constantly this kind of, okay, this thing is coming up. It's a big deal. So again, that's how you feel as somebody standing up in front of a judge or in front of a jury. Think about if your life is on the line in that situation and you don't know, you have no familiarity with the courtroom. You don't know how this works. You're in public. Your bad action is getting exposed in public, whether it's just the judge, clerk, bailiff, and prosecutor in the courtroom. That's enough people, right? Like that's so many. I'm Catholic, so confession, something that I need to make more regular, but pretty regularly go to confession. And even that, just telling the priest that is on the other side of a screen who doesn't know your identity, even telling another human being your faults and failings and sin through that screen is just embarrassing, and it's challenging. I've come out of confession feeling great because of the graces and blessings that are received through that beautiful sacrament. But going into it, it's a challenging thing, because you say your faults to another human being, and it's embarrassing. And so now think about, a situation like that is maximized, right? Like if you've privately apologized to somebody one-on-one, now think about apologizing or having your faults exposed to a room of people. You were driving drunk in front of a room of people. Sometimes there's 30 people sitting in the audience, 50 people sitting in the audience. Think about how embarrassing that is. Think about how embarrassing that is. Why that is such a just awful thing to be sitting there for an hour or 2 hours waiting for your case to be called, when you're going to go up in front of the judge, have the police or have the DA say this person got into an accident, hit a telephone pole, threw up on the side of the road, peed on himself, whatever it might be. Again, maybe a lot of the cases aren't that crazy, so it's I'm just kind of going through certain facts, but embarrassing facts. And this person now standing stone cold sober in that courtroom is listening to this, and this is the one moment that maybe publicly in their life is explained to another human being. That judge on the bench, the DA's explaining how the officer took note of this. Awful. I mean, this is your worst moment as a human being, being publicly exposed to complete strangers in high positions. I mean, just an awful situation if you think about it. I mean, it really is just a terrifying and terrible thing to go through. And so again, knowing that position, knowing that mental space that has to occupy many of our clients sitting in the courtroom is helpful, again, to be empathetic, put ourselves in our client's shoes so that we can appropriately represent them in the courtroom. Your job in a situation like that is to build up your client in front of the judge, right? I mean, that's what the sentencing hearing is for, so that we can communicate to the judge, this is an aberration. This is this is not indicative of who my client is as a human being. My client is a great mom. She's got very involved in her school volunteering. She is involved in her church community. She does volunteer events throughout the county. She has just done all of these activities or things that are helpful to other people, or she's advanced her career by going to through these schools and now is at a very high level job. Being able to communicate who your client is in terms of the good things, accomplishments, is so important. There, we can really just undersell our client because we know that community service is coming, and we've told them that. We, again, speaking about level 5, a DWI case that it's a .08, no accident, nothing else going on, no prior record, very high chance that community service is going to get imposed. We talked about that with the client. We talked about what the realistic expectations are, even though we can't promise anything. Here's what's likely going to happen in front of the judge. And so we know we've done, multiple pleas in front of this judge in the past. We know what's the kind of the standard formulaic language that's coming from the judge. So it's kind of like, okay, what do I need to give the judge bare minimum so that we can get out of the courtroom, go set up community service? If that is our mindset, again, we can be doing everything right from a legal perspective. We can have that assessment in hand. Maybe clients already completed treatment. Maybe they've done community service. Maybe we've got, we've made sure that they've got their court costs ready to go. They are dressed to the nines. They look great. We can have all of these legal things figured out about how the sentencing hearing itself is going to go. But if that's all that we're doing, we're missing a tremendous opportunity to help good people in their darkest hour. Because our client's darkest hour is now the hour that they're in the courtroom. And how do we help good people in their darkest hour? Well, in that situation, we make sure the judge knows what a good person that client is, that they are a contributing and over-delivering member of the community, if that's the case, right? That they are invested in helping others, that they are invested in bettering themselves. If we're not communicating that, we are missing a real opportunity to really provide wow experience to our client, because our client needs us. That's what we are there for. We are the advocate of our client. And I failed to do this on a number of occasions. Sometimes it's because I have been, in a rush. Sometimes it's because I know that this particular judge maybe is just, wants to kind of get the bare minimum. Let's get this sentence kind of knocked out and move on to the next case. There's just this kind of symphony that is the courtroom, kind of move on to the next case. I haven't always gone above and beyond when it comes to sentencing and communicating who my client is, communicating their character, communicating their reputation with their employer, communicating what they do in their free time, communicating what they learned from the treatment that they've done on the case. If we miss that opportunity to communicate those things, we are not being a good advocate. Black and white. We're not being a good advocate if we're not communicating those things to the court. This is their opportunity to have the good things about their life be told, so that it's not just the mess up, the screw up. That is the only thing that is said in this public space. So I encourage you, as homework from this episode, today's episode, to spend some time thinking about the dark moments in your life. And in terms of kind of transitioning this into DWI representation, think about the moments in your life that have basically gone dark split second. Just in a moment, everything was okay, and now it is completely off the rails. And then also think of those moments where you were anticipating the bad thing. You were anticipating the dreaded event that was coming up. Because if you can think about those events, you will have empathy for your client and you will be a better advocate for them. Look forward to speaking with you next time. If you found the information in this podcast to be valuable, I simply ask that you pay it forward and share this podcast with another member of the legal community. Also, if you would leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you are listening on, I would greatly appreciate it.